Yeah, I know that you guys would email me and do all those other things if we didn't mention the situation. I don't want that to be happening. So I'm going to do my best. Here's what I want to do, you guys. And we actually have a guest today that I'm going to introduce to you in a moment. Uh, because I wanted to make sure that our entire conversation was not just around what's going on, though I'm sure we could spend a lot of time on it. We're going to spend a few minutes here with it, and I'd love to hear from you guys, kind of reiterating. I don't want to drag this into the ground, but I think some of you guys need both a combination of a little bit of encouragement, affirmation, and maybe just a little bit of being able to kind of come together and commiserate a little bit around, kind of what was laid in our lap. um, let me screen share a little bit here for a second as we get into this. If your by the way, if your name on the screen, just kind of a little office work here, if your name on the screen is different than whatever else, like it's your daughter's work Zoom or whatever, can you help us out by changing that so that we can make sure we're not going to uh, do anything weird, but we just want to be able to keep track of who's here. And so if you wouldn't mind switching that, if it's going to be confusing. I think Brennan has taken some attendance on what's going on. Um, Let me screen share with you guys. One of the things I want to say is just thanks all you guys that are showing up in Vegas here in the next weeks. We just today went over 100 people, which is our largest ever think tank. So that's amazing. We were kind of surprised and pumped about it. And so we still have some room. If there's a few of you guys that are like, oh, I really meant to be a part of that. It's a month away. There's still space for you, but you need to kind of get on it at this point because we were that'll be attending for the 3 days. So those of you that are coming, it's going to be pretty exciting. You're going to meet some new folks, meet some reconnect with some other folks, and the rest of you just need to get yourself there. We've given you the code. We've told you it may not work for you this year, but if you are, we're still planning on it. You're just slow to it, or you're like, yeah, I just need to be there. Maybe with all this other stuff going on, it might be a good couple days for you. You can still jump in and get registered, but I think that's going to close down here in the next week to 10 days so that we can make some final arrangements. So make sure that you check on that. One of the things I want to do today is kind of work on it, work in it, which is that Growmentum thing. And I'm going to call on some of you guys to kind of contribute. I've given up on just opening the forum. So now we're going to do the small group thing where this bad small group leader just calls on people. And so Jeff Snod's going to send me names randomly to just call on. So you have to unmute and talk. So just be prepared at all moments to be called out. But in all seriousness, we do want to have a conversation, not just a one way. And so, what we're going to talk about today is really two things. We're going to talk about this crucial conversations we've been having. I want to raise it up just a little bit out of the moment if we can. I'm going to try and see if we can't learn a little bit from how we navigated this. Maybe some of you guys can share what I've learned. Maybe some of you guys will share what I screwed up, and I've realized it already, but where it's not just about the next few days, honestly, you guys, because part of leadership is looking forward and going, this won't be, it may be different than what you faced this week, but it will be another crisis that's coming. And so some of the things that you've learned about communication and you've learned about pastoring people and all those things we want to talk about. And then Ben is joining us from Illinois. And over the last few weeks, you might have seen even on the Monday Fuel, if you subscribe to that and you get that Monday newsletter that just kind of is an encouragement from our team. We've been talking a lot about connections and how are we working that pathway of guests from street to seat, mostly because we've been seeing a lot of, I'll use the term revival. You like that, Jeff? Moving stuff into that direction. And so most of you guys have started to see an influx of folks even before the last week or two. And so part of our job of working on it and in it is to pay attention to not just, oh, we're excited, the seats are full, how many services can we add and all that, but we're back to that COVID conversation around how do we move people just from showing up to actually move them towards connection. So I invited Ben to come on and talk a little bit about that for the second part of our call. Just they're doing some creative things that we've had some convictions around. And so I'm going to turn it to him, or we're going to Q&A him in just a little bit. So I'll talk about the last week, and we will conclude our call with some prayer. So don't let me forget, Aaron. You're the guard of all things. So don't let me forget as we honor everybody's time at about 11:55 or 8:55 p.m. my time, we'll pause and pray before you guys, because you guys are all still facing that. We do have a resource for you guys, and I think Ben might also have one that they're using there. A lot of you guys, if you're working with some of our team, you have that document. We have a link that we will give you in the chat here in just a second to it. It's not rocket science, but it's probably helpful for you and your team, especially if it's not you that needs it, but your team, in how to communicate uh, during a situation like we're in right now. Here's what I'm hearing, and then we'll talk a little bit about this. Here's what I'm hearing, and you guys are probably hearing a lot. I want to acknowledge that there's a variance of both perspectives on the deeper issues around what's taken place over the last week, and I want to acknowledge that there's also some differences of what I'm calling your Jerusalem, that you're called to, that you're being called to lead, and the context of that, whether it's size, scale, etc., that you guys are navigating. The church that you're leading, some of the things that you've done. Before we get into these conversations, one of the things I want you guys to jot down, either mentally or physically, somewhere, is the idea that any of the work that you didn't do prior to this crisis or this conversation happening, you need to make sure that that does not repeat itself. In other words, some of the preparatory teaching, if it motivates you more and find it directionally, how are we preparing people? How are we biblically grounding people? All the way to how are we preparing our staff for the next crisis? If there are things that you recognize now, and I'd love to hear from some of you about that, that you go, as we move forward, how do I actually get more preemptive around those things? That would be a very strong, like, numero uno encouragement I would have. Because here's what I think happens when you're in crisis: the level of alignment or the lack of alignment in your team and in your church will reveal itself. So when something out of the box happens, and I don't mean alignment politically, I don't mean alignment around those things. I'm just saying a general alignment around who we are as Christ followers, kingdom of God, bigger than all the stuff that's going on in the world. Your alignment or lack thereof in that area probably has revealed itself in the last week. And it's fine. You just need to acknowledge that and begin to think about what are the things that I can do to better align my church community and my team around that a little bit. I'm going to ask a few of you guys to kind of insert yourself a little bit in this to kind of help us a little bit tackling the situation. So, Texera, are you on here? I think I saw you come in. Mike, are you on here a little
I'm
bit?
here. Yep.
Mike, can you talk a little bit about, and I'm not going to have everybody do this because it's probably going to be a little bit redundant, but
You're breaking up.
Mike, can you talk a little bit about what you guys did there in Bonita and how you approached it this last week? And I'm not necessarily even looking for words. I'm looking more for your approach as the leader. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that for us. Do you get me, Mike?
Um, I can hear you. You were breaking up there a little bit, but I can hear you now.
Okay.
Um, it's been an interesting journey. I'm sure for all of us on the call, it's been an interesting journey in terms of navigating. At times, it feels like navigating through a minefield, because there's such uh, you kind of referenced COVID, feel like a COVID call all over again. And there's things that we're navigating through. Our lead pastor walked through it. I felt like he did a great job just kind of navigating through the room, knowing that both sides, that not both sides, I think there's multiple angles that this is approached and looked at, and very polarizing, depending on who you're having a conversation with. So he did a great job with our three services. I had our men on Thursday nights and just walked through it because they were when you take those three things with the shooting of Charlie, and then the shooting in Colorado, and then put that together with 9/11 remembrance and all of that. Man, that was a heavy week throughout the course of the week. So just having those conversations and even taking it deeper. I was sharing with you, Lee, that I had a 90-minute conversation yesterday with our worship leader, who is African American. And I know we have some on the call as well, our brothers here. And it was such an enlightening and inviting conversation because there's so many different layers to the different responses that are happening out there. And I'm trying to wrap my own mind around it all. And the only way that I can do that is to listen and have conversations to better understand what we see being played out on the big screen.
I love that. What was your level of congregationally, Mike, on a scale of 1 to 10? What was your level of uh, what word am I looking for? Um, People that were not happy, I guess is the best way I could say
Um,
that.
Well, those
Either way,
I'm not going to see. Yeah, I won't see those emails, but I know that there were some that came, and there were
sure.
some people that there were a few that got up and walked out. Some emails that came in, but I'm not sure at the full scale of that or the scope of it. I haven't talked with Jeff yet in terms of where that's at, but I know
Right.
that there were some.
Sure. Okay. Anybody else want to give us kind of their perspective on moving forward with it and what's going on? Ben, do you want to speak to your situation at all a little bit on a larger scale before we get into your stuff a little later?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think for us, it was kind of like going back to the COVID days where you knew no matter what you said or did, you were going to be wrong with half the people. And so what we decided to do was, one, we focused, if we said anything about Charlie Kirk, we said something about we're just glad that he knew Jesus and now we know where he's at. We also made sure to address the shooter, had a mom and dad who brought him home from the hospital, who just had the worst day in their own life. And then we spent time telling our people what it looks like to be a leader. And that's not fighting through social media. And that's not, thinking you're going to save people through the fight. And so our conversation a lot switched to, what can we actually control, and then training our people to then, take those next steps in representing who Jesus is and who we want to be as a church.
Yeah, I think thanks, Ben. I think one of the strongest things that everybody can do is really speak to this more from the personal, in the sense of there is the public and there's the policies and there's the political part of it that exists, and we can't deny that. I think at the same time, one of the things that all of you have done, the ones I've talked to that have tried to navigate well, is not skirting that issue, but making sure that we're pointing back to Christ and pointing back to where we personally take responsibility for the level of action that's going on within our communities now, that it can easily become a them. It's always them. And I think some of the guys I listened to, some of you here on this call, did a phenomenal job kind of pointing it back at us, as even the fact that we are broken people, and that the them is us, and that we have to address the sin and the brokenness in our lives, even if it's not at the scale of what's being publicly out there in the media. I know that that there was a lot of challenges with people talking to them afterwards. And so I dropped a little document. And Ben, if you have that other document and you want to share it, feel free to drop it in the chat. But Nate Merrill, who's on our team, but he's unable to be on the call today, he just stepped onto our team a few months ago and stepped off the team with Josh Howerton. And if you know Josh at all, however you feel about Josh, Nate is an expert at navigating stuff, because Josh draws, and sometimes intentionally draws stuff. And so we asked Nate to kind of put together some thoughts around how he was constantly dealing with blowback from things that were said. And so some of this comes from Nate. And so on your screen, guys, and in that chat, it's just, guys, please forgive me. Most of this is very obvious. You guys are doing this stuff, but sometimes it's helpful for us to remember these things, and or you have younger staff or staff maybe that came from a different secular environment that are now part of your team, that maybe this kind of dialogue is not natural for them. And so please don't be offended if you feel like, yeah, of course, Lee. This is both for you and for those team members. And so love for you to prepare them with that. This is really dealing with people who are, in some sense, unclear or unhappy with response to any kind of crisis beyond just the one or the situation that we're just dealing with. So Nate put this together. And so he really talked yesterday. He and I talked a little bit around this idea of how are you posturing yourself and what is your presence in that conversation, that there has to be a level where you are pastoral and that you are patient, that you are not looking for the fight, because they probably are. And so you have to take on, even if it's something that you have to really, really hold yourself to. Shane, who's the lead guy at the church that I just stepped off the staff, he texted me and told me that they literally had a guy who physically confronted him in the lobby on Sunday and had to be removed. It was a big scene that was there. And it was partly because Shane would not get into it with him. And he wanted to have literally like an aggressive physical conversation around that. And so that was passion out of control. But you have to kind of have that posture of, I want to listen and I want to be present. That's number two, is to listen and lament. It's the idea of asking some of the questions where we should all be better at this anyway. Help me understand, what's missing. What are we not, where are you not clear? What's concerning to you, right? Validate the emotions that they may be feeling. In some ways, just really trying to understand, even in the midst of where you are leading. So it's posture and presence, listen and lament. Some of your younger leaders can really use this. Use some restraint when you're responding. Kind of reiterate what the goal and the intention was. If you had to communicate something, or if there was a decision made. I don't want this conversation right now, guys, to just be about last week. This is really generically how I would encourage you guys to kind of approach things as they go forward, right? To just be gracious. Don't try to do too much. I'm going to candidly say something to you guys right now, and if it's comes off wrong, I don't mean it to. I've been seeing the last couple of days a lot of, we've been seeing as a team, a lot of video, social media stuff that's now being played by guys making statements and kind of backpedaling or trying to explain what they did on Sunday. If I could strongly encourage you to, if you're going to do that, to really process that well. I can't speak for those who are doing it. I don't know the situation. I'm not being critical. I just know that sometimes in our desire to make everything right, we make it worse. And so as I've watched some of these videos, I'm just a little concerned that there's blowback. And so now we feel like we've got to get in front of it. And my concern is, I'm not sure that we can fix or solve or just allow people to feel better. I think sometimes the better posture is to have one-on-one or smaller conversations with those who potentially are the most concerned. And so if you're there sitting watching some of these video statements that are being made and you're thinking, maybe I should make one, let me just caution you that what you're trying to accomplish there may end up adding more fuel to the fire, and you may just reset the clock on what you need to deal with. So just, again, if that's what you have to do in your Jerusalem, do it, but just use some caution around that. Or if you're coaching your senior guy and he's getting blowback and thinking, maybe I need to make another statement, just pump the brakes a little bit and make sure that it's appropriate and what the objective is for that. Because I think it could end up having a good intention and end up actually extending the tension. You like what I did there? Somebody tweet that out, right? Good intentions can extend the tension a little bit. So there you go. So just respond with restraint, represent with respect, keep your spirit where it needs to be. And here's some phrases that we put down there that might help you navigate. Again, some of these are for your more junior leaders that may not be used to being confronted. I've had a couple of youth pastors actually reach out that some of them had to deal with parents who didn't understand why they didn't deal with it in a student setting. And so it is leaking down into some of those secondary settings that you guys are dealing with on the whole. All right. On the document, and then I'll shut up for a minute and hear from some of you guys. On the document we put there, Nate also included kind of a template for maybe how you can approach, depending on your scale as a church, who needs to be having a conversation. I think the intent there is, if you are the lead pastor or you're the executive pastor, all of those conversations may or may not need to be led or executed by you. That there may be, if you're a multi-site, there may be campus pastors that can do some of that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the point of that that if there's 50 emails, it doesn't necessarily mean that you as the lead pastor have to have coffee with 50 irate people. So there's where we are with that. At the end of the day, we've got to get the centricity of mission and of the gospel of Christ back to the center. So whatever you guys need to do to coach your team or or move your team back there, I would do that. As you approach this weekend, be very careful. Some of you are gonna feel like you have to address it again, it's fine if you feel like you need to, but I would just make sure that you're doing it in a way that's going to lead towards the mission being centric and not another distraction. Peterson, I want to hear from you from the East Coast, bud. Give me some of your perspective. Tell me I'm offline, out of whack, or whatever you need to do. I won't be offended. I'll just cut you off.
No, I think it's something that we're navigating with our staff because our pastors preach in person at all the locations, and we did not address it this week because we had people that like politically it's so purple here that we didn't feel like there was necessarily a benefit in doing that. I talked to several pastors, and one of them made a comment that I think if Charlie would have wanted something, it would be for us to point people to Jesus. And so we made really our focus this week on trying to point people to him, and we did not address the specific thing. So whether it was right or wrong, it's what our leadership thought was the best thing for us in the season.
Are you still navigating a little bit of it, Jeremy?
Oh yeah. We've definitely had a lot of emails and people that want us to come out with some kind of statement and put out some kind of stance on a specific thing, which we don't feel inclined to do that at this point.
Got it. Anybody on here want to just again with the spirit of the call, just kind of add some affirmation or help or some things that are learnings that you've had, or maybe something that you would candidly say we screwed this up. This is a
Hey,
safe
Lee,
place. Yes, who's this?
that's Christopher here.
Christopher, thanks for
Yeah,
being here,
first,
bud. Good to see you, man.
yeah, you as well. Thank you guys for speaking into this a little bit. I may want to take a kind of a different approach on this conversation just for a quick second. A couple
Please.
months ago, you guys you led us in a conversation around the importance of the sacred and the secular. You led us in that conversation as executive pastors to say, yeah, let's be about the nuts and the bolts and the business, but also let's not forget the spirit, right?
Spirit
And
aware, led of the spirit, strategically aware.
here you go. I couldn't find my notes fast enough, so I apologize. I couldn't remember
That's
that
good.
quote. But so interestingly enough, I preached a 2-week series here at our church that started last week, and it was titled Overcoming Overload. And on Thursday, going into Sunday, I was praying and I felt like the Lord was like, you guys need to do a fast, a 7-day fast that includes a digital detox. So I text my senior guy and I was like, hey, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm sensing. What do you think? He's like, give me 15 minutes. I'm going to pray about it. He texted back in like 7 and was like, yeah, this is like, you heard from God on this. Let's do it. So I put all the elements together. I reached out to our media folks, our social media folks, our video folks, put all the collateral together. And so that Sunday, we went dark on social media, on all media for 7 days. So at our church, most of our leaders, me included, we did not even know what was happening until until Thursday afternoon. And the only reason that we found out then was because a member of our church said, hey, how do you guys feel about this? So why do I mention that? I just want to mention that because I think to the point of the whole sacred and secular, if we lose sight of the work of the Holy Spirit in our lives, even in these complex social discord moments, we're gonna miss God, right? And so regardless of the politics of it all, the political views of it all, like there's a role that the Holy Spirit has to play in our lives that like his job is to lead and guide us into truth. And I just wanted to just kind of mention that because I'm like, one of the statements we've been making since last week is, man, God loves us enough that he didn't even want us to see all of this when it happened last week. We were spared of all the drama and all of the things, not just that happened here locally in the United States, but even all the stuff that happened globally. I mean, there were so many other things that happened in 1 week that had we been on it, it would have been, social media wise, it would have been a nightmare. So I just want to encourage the brothers and encourage the sisters that are here to just lean in on the Holy Spirit as well.
Christopher, thank you so much. Seriously, brother. Thanks for being bold and also listening and being willing to do that because you had no idea. That was great. Here's what I would add, and I don't need to add much. So just live in what Christopher said. But here's what I would add. I think to his point, I think as people are flocking, and this is a little bit of a sneaky segue to Ben, so forgive me, but as people are flocking to some degree, a lot of churches are seeing people come in, people are returning, people are hungry. Um, to Christopher's point, I think as they enter in, whatever their expectation or their why is behind the reason they're showing up, we know what our why is as far as what we are there to then give to them and to present space for God to move in their lives. And so I think in the midst of us as leaders having to be strategically aware, right, of how are we going to approach this and those things, I think at the same time, to his point, if we are spiritually lost in that and we miss an opportunity um, to actually really give the good news and not just comment on the news, we've missed an opportunity, and it's unfortunate if we do that. So whatever encouragement you take from that, I think would be key, and whatever influence you have in your particular lead guy, XP staff member, I think there's a strength there. Because I'm going
Hey,
to let that
Lee,
be.
and
Yes, please. Who's that,
yeah,
Jeremy?
one
Yes,
quick
please,
thing. Yeah, I
please.
would just say there were several pastors that were almost creating this like fear tactic into other pastors, like, hey, if you don't say something about this, you need to resign your position this week. And I've had a lot of pastors just reach out to me like in fear for their jobs, or just like they're so fed up with this. And so I think just something just to keep in mind is if you have a group of pastors that you're pouring into, is use this opportunity to encourage them, because a lot of them are at a point where they're like, I don't even want to navigate this stuff anymore and I'm done. So just an encouragement for you guys as well.
Come on, Jeremy. It's so good. Yeah, because I've had a couple of those texts, like where, semi tongue in cheek, but also some serious nature of like, I just don't think I can deal with this because it feels so out of alignment. And then people are and that's the part that's very frustrating, you guys. Again, candor from me is that it feels like at the moment where we, as those of us that are called into this sacred role in ministry, need each other, that there's certain elements that are actually trying to pit us against each other in some way, shape, or form. And we need to be a force that will push back on that and not allow that. I would imagine on the 40 or 50 people on this call, there are all sorts of different political perspectives. If we started talking politically, how this whole thing played out, you get it all over the spectrum on here, and that's fine. The reality is that's not our primary core of who we are and what we're called to do. It's secondary. And if we keep making that primary, I think we're going to be lost, and we're not going to gain what's going on. Someone texted me today, and I think it's a good metaphor, and then we need to move forward. But somebody said it feels like some pastors are like Peter trying to cut off the ear of the soldier as they were arresting Jesus in the garden, like picking up the sword and trying to aggressively fight for something that even Christ is saying, no, this is not where you need to be putting your efforts. Not sure that that's off base in
Hey,
some
Lee, can we
cases.
just, I know we're transitioning and this is not a sideways thing. I just want to say this. And I know Lee's trying to say this, but I just want to reiterate it. If there's anybody on this call, anybody, our whole Momentum team, we are here. If you want to talk after this one-on-one, we just,
100%.
we get it, man. Everyone, Jeff's here, Aaron's here, Brennan's here, bunch of our crew is here. We just get right now. We get this season, and we just want to make sure everyone, like when we went into today's call, we were praying for this whole crew because if there's someone on this call that's discouraged and doesn't feel like they want to say anything in a large group setting, please reach out to us individually. Please, do a direct message on the chat. We want to support you. We want to just be a listening ear because we realize it's a really tough deal.
Appreciate it. So at the end, actually, of the call, I think we'll give an opportunity for some of you that maybe want to have a one-on-one, where we typically do some deep dives. You may want to just say, hey, can I just get 15 minutes with somebody just to process? We're going to give you that opportunity in the chat. If you need that, just throw it in the chat, and Aaron or Brandon or Scott, somebody will pick those up. This isn't a Grow Minimum client thing, by the way. This is just us wanting to love on you guys. So if you're like, man, I could use 15 minutes just to process. I'm by myself, or my team's not at the point where they can process with me, etc. Obviously, if you work with one of our guys, you can reach out to them, and they should have already been in touch with you. But if they haven't, reach out to them, and they'll give you some stuff to go on there. So Ben, I teed you up really well, bud. Aren't you excited now after all of that?
Yeah, it's a lot for sure.
It's a lot. It's a lot. So Ben, Ben, introduce yourself a little bit while I pull up the slides again so you can have
Yeah.
some stuff on the screen. And then I've got some questions. I'm going to tee Ben up just more with a Q&A. Ben, introduce yourself a little bit, bud.
Yeah, so my name is Ben Olafritz. I'm the executive pastor at The Crossing in Quincy, Illinois, multi-site church. We have 12 locations spanning 3 states. And so my former life, I was a principal for years and then got called into the ministry about 10 years ago. And can't
What a
imagine doing
bummer, dude. What a bummer, dude.
one crazy world to the next.
That's
So
right. Love it. The interesting thing about Ben, and I'll say a little bit more about this, is their multi-site model, which is not what we're going to talk about today, but it'll come up, is very unique in that their main campus is a fairly large, though not mega size, and they have they are in rural, they have nailed it in rural small towns throughout area of Illinois. Ben, talk about like the average size of some of those sites are like 100 people, right? Some
yeah,
of them.
we have one, our broadcast campus is about 3,300. We have 2 campuses at 1,000, 2 at the 700 or 800 mark, and the rest of them are 300 attendees a week or lower. We have towns of our biggest, the only town that has a target is 40,000, and we have a town that's 125. So,
Yeah.
and then everything in between.
So they are doing some unique stuff in rural settings. Some of you on the call have actually talked to Ben, or maybe you've been out there just kind of looking at it because it's a very interesting approach when you think about multi-siting in a rural. Because we think about multi-site in a city like Phoenix, that's just a bunch of Chipotle's and Home Depots. Sorry, Phoenix shot that are out there. And sorry, Ryan, it's true though. You know it's true. And how easy, but what Ben's doing is interesting. But here's where I wanted Ben to talk is that part of what you guys know is a huge deal at Growmentum is when we talk about this idea of church on mission, which you guys have seen this, and we talk about, if you can see my cursor, guys, on the screen, we talk about this part that leads out of gather purposefully, where I'm circling right now. This is what we want to talk about today, because with the situation in our culture and the fear and the concern, plus the Gen Z kind of massive move back into church and kind of very interested in faith and the things most of our churches at whatever scale are seeing people coming in that are either have been away from church for a long time or they're completely unchurched, and they're coming in. And so part of the goal then is to go, okay, they're here, they're in a seat, but how do we now move them towards a place of engagement? So we talk about a lot about this pathway being broken down into some different steps of them identifying themselves, creating an initial process where there's a step that's taken, and then moving them to some sort of an engagement step, a discipleship step, a serve, a connection, a give, those sorts of elements. You guys all have your version of this, or you're running this model in your church. All of you do. If you don't, you should, but you're running some sort of a biblical discipleship model that indicates these behaviors. So Ben, talk a little bit, and I've got it on here, Ben, talk a little bit about your unique approach. And then I want to give time for guys to kind of ask. And guys, I want you to know the reason I invited Ben is because they're running this play in their 3,000 and they're running the play in their 100. And so across the spectrum today of where you are on this call, as far as size, it doesn't matter. I think the principles that Ben wants to talk about are good. So Ben, I'll try to follow you on these slides, bud.
Yep. Yeah. So basically, let me just tell you where the journey that we were on. We do an incredible job of baptizing people. We'll baptize 1,000 people this year, but where we struggled, where we went on this journey a couple of years ago, was what we do with them after that. And so we just believed that we weren't in a spot to actually take on the growth, to take on the influx of people that come back to church when we have a week like we had last time. And so we went on this journey of like really talking about this idea of we need to get back to pastoring people over anything programmatic, because we'd gotten to a spot where most of our, hey, you raised your hand as a new guest, became a process from the standpoint of we send a text message and we have our staff that tries to make 2 or 3 phone calls, never gets anybody, can't read the email on the connection card, whatever that is, and it just falls apart. And so we wanted to make everything we were doing really easy. And I don't know how you guys are, but I'm at an age now where my most favorite thing at the water park is the lazy river. Like, I don't want to ride very many slides. I don't want to be splashed. I just want to sit. And the reason why I want to do that is because I don't have to do any work. Everything, once I get in the water, the flow naturally does the work for me. And so what you're seeing here is our version of that. We wanted to say, how do we take new people How do we take existing people that have never raised their hand or gotten connected? And then how do we get them in the lazy river to where it just will take care of itself? And that's where we came up with, we want one place. So if you go to any of our lobbies, the most profound thing is we have it in neon signs. It says new here, a whole team of people that's bigger than any other team, really just getting to a spot where we want to make sure that new people know exactly where to go. There's no confusion in that. And that is our one place. You're going to go there, you're going to get connected, and then we guarantee that we are going to get every single person a one-on-one coffee date meeting with somebody from our staff or a high-level difference maker within the week of filling out connection card or raising your hand in some capacity.
And we need to stop right there, Ben, because this is the part that people are already going, what are you talking about? Okay. So as you, in the sense of the one-on-one. So number one question I have, and then guys, you can put some questions in the chat and Brandon or those guys will pick them up. When you say a spot, we all do that. Are you saying that throughout every location, they create or replicate that idea that there's a
Correct.
touch point? Okay, great. So translation to you guys, let's make sure there's a touch point. Again, all of us probably have it, but let's just check back. Ben, what would you say about that touch point if you were coaching somebody on what needs to be present there, or if they were scrubbing out, they've had that same little desk with the little old lady that stands there every week, and they've had that for 5 years. What would you say they need to be scrubbing out? I didn't prep you for this question, so good luck. But what should they be looking for in your experience? What did you guys do poorly, and where are you starting to see some wins there?
So I'd say, believe it or not, the busier it is, the more people are drawn to it. So we actually staff it with more people than probably needs to be, both around it and in it. We also have even said, we found that if one person's filling out a card, it turns to 10. If nobody's filling out a card, everybody's scared to go there. And so we even have people that will be filling out a card that maybe even aren't a new person, just to make people feel like they're not the only one doing that. We also talked about the space being circular, to where no matter what side you come to, where if I have to wait in line, I'm not going to do it as much as making it circular to where there's all kinds of spots to be able to come there. And then we made sure there was no place to store stuff. It is wide open tabletop, nothing you can store, so it doesn't look like a catch-all trash. It looks like the nicest place we have in every lobby. And so those are things that we've learned more on the functional side.
Love that, because guys, part of what we want to give you on this is some functional, practical things that you can walk out of here and go walk in your room and go, what is this? What is not working with this? And all of that. Ben, are you communicating that from stage, I assume, and from everywhere? There's like most of us are doing, like pointing. Great. Talk a little bit about.
We're making sure that we say it at the beginning of service. Clayton, a lot of times, will start his message with that, and then we always say it at the end of service. And our messaging is always the same: we expected you to be here. We know you're new, and we want to make sure that you know what's next for you.
Yeah. Word to some of the guys, I want to ask you about the coffee bin in this river that we've got on the screen. Some of you guys, I know that your guest flow is maybe not at the level. And one of the questions we have, Ben, is and I know this is scale, so what is your percentage of guests that you're seeing to actual average weekend attendance of your AWA? What do you want to see, and what are you seeing? That's maybe some of your smaller campuses, not your larger one.
Yeah, I would, just to give you the top end, I would say since we've been doing this play for the last year, we've identified we're not just talking about identification, but actually getting a one-on-one meeting with them. We've seen that above 50 to 60% increase from where we were before. We would say on an average week, our smaller campuses are seeing somewhere between, like our campus below 300, probably between 3 and 7 new guests identified, all the way up to 30 to 50 a week at our broadcast campus.
Great.
And then I would say probably, like I say, that's way above 60% actually not just got information, but actually was able to make contact with them. And we have every person gets a 3 contact. And if you haven't responded in 3 or haven't taken us up on the offer, then we feel like you probably haven't wanted to do that. But we would not let them go until we've done that 3 times.
So part of what we're talking about here, guys, if some of this is different convo for you, is you may have a front door or back door problem, which is terms we've used before. To what Ben's referencing, sometimes you may have guests, and because your identification or your communication is not seamless, They are there. You just don't know it. That's why the identify is at the top of that pathway that we showed you a minute earlier, and where Ben and his team have worked. It's like they may have had that number of guests prior. We don't know. But if your system is broken to actually identify them, or it's hard, or there's friction, a term we've used a lot, then they may be there and not be able to be followed up. Now, vice versa, if you've got an invite problem, that's another call for another month, but that would be a difference. So if you're not seeing the flow of guests, you either have guests and they're not identifying themselves, or your front door is pretty locked tight. And so that's where, to Chris's question on the chat, I think it would be important for you to, at least if you're not measuring that already, how many are identifying, that needs to start like tomorrow. So Ben, talk about the coffee, because you guys are not a church of 100. I mean, you have some campuses that are. And so when I first heard that, I thought, what are you talking about that you would try? But then I've been convicted lately, and a lot of our team, around this idea of some of the advancements in guest engagement has been around just this heavy personal connection convention that a lot of church leaders are having now, versus the technologically text type of thing. So talk about it. I'll shut up and listen, but tell us a little bit about how that works and what the philosophy was behind it.
Yeah, I mean, the philosophy was anytime that you can get in front of somebody and hear their story, it just allows you to be able to pastor them, allows you to be able to lead those things and know what maybe a next step is, because you don't want to step into a next step that is going to be something that's real detrimental to their walk, but you don't know what you don't know. And as soon as you get in front of them, and now all of a sudden you know that they just lost a spouse, or they have church hurt, or this is the first time they've been in church and this is why. All those things, we always say, you get good information by asking good questions, and you make good decision by having good information. And all that goes into, I have to get in front of them to be able to really know what that looks like. And so for us, that is, we have upped all of our campus budgets, probably more than tripled them, on the money we give every staff member or every difference maker team to be able to take them up to coffee, take them to lunch, because we just believe that physical contact of one-on-one, face-to-face is the best information you can get to be able to lead. And they're going to tell you stuff about your church you need to know to be better. And all those things only happen if you're sitting across the table, drinking a cup of coffee. And it's amazing when you have somebody has a cup of coffee in their hand, what they're willing to share versus a phone call, text message, any of those kinds of things.
Hey, tell me about one you've done, Ben, and how that was, like, personally done.
Yeah.
Did it just
So one that I did, I don't know, it's been a couple weeks ago now. She's a 75-year-old lady that actually, the reason why I got paired with her is because I do CrossFit and she does CrossFit. So that was the original connecting point. And I went to coffee with her and got to hear the fact that they moved over here from South Africa. Her husband left her shortly after they got here. She raised 3 kids, and just kind of some of the struggles that have come with being over here and trying to work with kids when you're not actually from the United States. And so it was a really cool conversation that now she had a heart for people, elderly. So now she goes into nursing homes that we got her hooked up with, and she leads that ministry now to just go in and visit with people that are in the nursing home and don't have anybody doing that. But that would have never happened had I not known her story, that then I got to take a next step, not say, hey, why don't you rock a baby or greet. That wasn't her calling, nor her conviction. It was more in the elderly community.
questions for Ben on coffee dates? And if you want a coffee date with Ben, you're going to have to go to Illinois. Questions?
And no matter if you fly in here, you got a 2-hour drive after you fly in. So just be prepared. So
I know. I keep trying to go see Ben, and every time I look at trying to get there, I get really discouraged.
yeah, we tell all of our staff that we're trying to hire, don't Google us, meet our people first, because our manager's not one's going to hire you. So.
All right, guys, on the call, questions around that. I've got this program process placement here, Ben, and I want you to talk about it, but I want to pause, not just on the coffee, guys, but talk to Ben, maybe ask questions around how they actually executed that. How did they get their staff to actually kind of get in alignment? Anybody?
I would ask, can you just double tap on your 2 processes? Just as far as, are those the exact same 2 every single time, or does that vary?
So we're trying to get them in those 2 processes every time. We're trying to get them in some kind of be a difference maker for us, which is a serving opportunity or in a discovery Bible study. And so, but what we've had to tweak inside of that is we get everybody to the outlet first, because the outlet helps them. We take them through spiritual gifts inventory that then tells them things. We also let them know most people don't we have realized specifically with men, most of our Sunday morning serving opportunities aren't something they want to do. They don't want to rock a baby, make a cup of coffee, but all of a sudden you start a widow's ministry. They would love to go wire some outlets and do that stuff, but we have to kind of get them into that outlet before we can then get them into those 2 placements. And so that's the flow for us of recognizing where's their gifting, where's their passion area. We've started more ministry with difference makers leading them because of areas of passion, because we were able to identify and get them in a placement that made sense for them.
Does this work generationally? Have you found, Ben, or is it too early to tell? I mean, you went out to coffee with a 75-year-old lady, so there's that.
Yep.
But does it resonate with, does the idea or the concept of this program process really work with our 25-year-olds?
Yeah, so in our collective ministry, which is our young adult, that's probably one of the areas we're seeing some of the biggest growth, and we believe it's all because of this. They want community. They also want somebody that's older than them to be able to invest in them. So I think that is something we're definitely seeing with the younger crowd. The other thing that's been interesting that we're having to figure out is we have a lot more identification of women than men in the initial phase. And we have more male staff than female staff, and doing one-on-one coffee dates, male, female, that creates a different challenge. So we've had to raise way more women volunteers and staff members game up to be able to handle some of those things. But we've not seen any breakdown in the age thing as much as older men are slower to the plate than women as a whole.
Got it. Other thoughts or questions? We got about 5 minutes. Ben, how would you tell somebody to start? Because right now, like, we got guys that maybe they do have people that are identifying themselves and their system just isn't pushing them. Because what we see, guys, is if you can get 25% retention of every guest that identifies themselves, that's actually pretty high. I know that some of you are like, wow, but that's 25% retention would be effective. And then the retention should go up from there as a percentage of the environments they're in. In other words, I know, Ben, you have a number around, if they go to coffee, what's the retention rate? Pretty high, right?
Oh, yeah, over 80 for sure.
Yeah. So now what percentage of people actually take you up on the coffee?
Yeah, I would say like that was that number I was giving. I would say probably of the connection cards, we're probably well over 60% of people that we get in front of.
Really? Okay. That's super high, right? In a good way.
Yeah.
Great.
We got a question in the chat from Scott Harland, my buddy. When and how often is the outlet offered? Invitation from stage, website, or only through follow-up from the new here?
So all those happen. So they're at least once a month. And then the bigger the campus, the more strategy, because we try to limit them to 50 people or less because of what you're trying to accomplish in that time. So our biggest campus does it twice a month. They started when we started the process with all people who had recently been baptized. And then they've widened the net from there, where our smaller campuses are doing it. When I say smaller, probably our middle range are doing it once a month. And then some of our smaller campuses, like the 100-person campus that's in a town of 125, they probably do it once every 2 to 3 months, just because of the sheer less number of people to be able to do that.
Other questions in the time we have? And this is way complex, not complex. It's not complex, but it's way more involved, right? Than we have complete time. Right. So back to it. Give me some starters for folks. They're sitting here listening to this. They're texting their person already going, hey, we need to fix this or whatever. Or they're feeling good about what they're doing, or they're going, we don't know what we're doing. Give some encouraging first steps they might take to get going.
So I would say 2 things. If you can ever get somebody that even is a friend of yours that doesn't come to church to walk your new guest process and tell you where it's clunky and where there's catch, that is always beneficial information. Sometimes we are so institutionalized in what we do every week that we miss the simplest things. So I would tell you first, an audit with somebody who actually runs your process or somebody that doesn't go to church. That's great information that you're going to get back. Second thing I would say to you is once you know some of those things is you got to get everybody talking the same language. When you have one, your people don't know where to send new guests, they don't know what to do with them, or there's any kind of confusion. People are they're like my mom. As soon as the first thing on the internet doesn't work, she just shuts down. Like she doesn't want to try to do that. And the same thing is true in that. I would also say you got to really think through how many of your things to new guests are what we would say are fishing pole versus fishing net. And I think both have value, but we are way more of a fishing net, we say it from stage and we expect people to do that, versus the net, the pole is way more, I want to get in front of you one-on-one. I want to get you plugged into an area that makes sense for you, not holistic. And so I would say first steps for me would be know your process, have somebody tell you that, get everybody in alignment where they're talking the same language, and then figure out what are you actually asking people to do, and does it need to be more pointed like a fishing pole moment versus a fishing net?
Rich right there. The fishing net, fishing pole. Seriously. The word we've used in the past, you guys, that Ben's alluding to is really vetting through your system and looking for points of friction. In other words, the Pope Andy Stanley says time in erodes awareness of. And so a lot of us, we think our system is fine, but if we really leaned in, to Ben's point, we would find lots of points of friction, especially for the person who is unchurched or dechurched. If I'm church guy, if Lee shows up at Peterson's church, I know the drill. I'm probably going to push past some of the friction to go introduce myself, find a group, whatever, right? That's not who we need to build it for. In a sense, we need to build it for the one who's been away or never been there, which I think probably Ben alludes to the fishing pole analogy, because that's going to be much more effective with those that are in that situation, I would assume, where the net would catch me and I'd be fine, right?
Sure.
Like, okay, I get it. Like,
Yep.
Here we
And
go.
we always tell people too, this is the way most people are wired. If it was your dad that you've been praying for 25 years, or your brother, you would have a level of service that you would hope that he or she is going to receive. And that, if that is what you desire, that's what you should also be doing for somebody else's brother or dad or sister or whatever that looks like, because sometimes you only get that one shot. And if you screw it up, you don't get another one.
And to tackle on that, before we wrap and pray here, somebody's dad is showing up this weekend. So, right. So it's like we go through weekend after weekend and we're prepping, we're doing our thing. But the reality is somebody has made an invite already. Somebody is pumped out of their mind, and they're also scared to death because their barber, who they've been inviting for 5 years, said they're going to come because maybe all this stuff that's going on. And all of a sudden they care greatly about everything that happens for that guest from the time they interact at the front parking lot to the front door, no matter the size or scale of your church, to the system that you have in place to actually welcome them and create hospitality. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes we get involved in all the other stuff, and it's like, this is front door. Somebody needs to be accountable for all of this. And so our encouragement would be you would do this. There's been, look in the chat, you guys, Ben put his email. It's actually his real email. It's not a fraud email. It's his real, and Ben's a great guy. Like, I just asked him a week ago and he's like, yeah, I'd love to do it. And he's an open book, and they're learning as well. And so as they're learning, he would love to just be able to share some of this stuff with you guys. I mean, again, I love their example because of the scale at which. So I'm going to ask Ben to actually pray for us. We got like 2 minutes. I think in both aspects of this conversation today would be part of our closing prayer. One, that obviously as we navigate the ongoing tension that we're feeling, that we would have some peace, but also have some wisdom. And then secondly, just as we welcome more and more people into our congregations, that in our church communities, that we would be ready and wise about how we do that. So Ben, I'll let you close us out before we get out of here.
God, we just come to you, and we are all nothing unless you show up. Our plans are nothing unless you make them happen. None of us individually are anything without your guidance and direction. And that's what I pray for, Lord. There's going to be somebody in each one of our paths this week that is just longing for something better than what they're living. And I pray we have the answer, which is Jesus, and we tell it to them. And God, I pray that our focus is never on the things that the world tells us are important, but the things that you tell us are important. And God, I pray for wisdom and discernment as we pastor people through some dark days and some mountaintop experience. I pray we're prepared for both. And God, most importantly, I pray that the people in this call that are struggling and the people in this call that are doing really, really well, they know they have a community of people, and they're not too prideful to reach out and say, I need help. I need encouragement. I need my arms lifted up in battle. God, I thank you so much that you love us. I thank you so much that you have a plan for every single one of us. And God, I just pray that our eyes are open to it, our hearts are open to it, and we are bold enough to follow you no matter the cost. And it's your name we pray. Amen.
Appreciate you guys. In the chat, one more time before you sign off, two things. One is, if you're still planning on coming to Vegas in October, you got about a week to register before we have to shut it. We just got over 100 registrations today. Our 100th came in, so it's a big one. And then secondly, Brandon put in there before you get off, because if you get off, you won't. If you need someone to reach out to you and just process 15 minutes, just drop your name in there and somebody will follow up with you and just kind of be an advocate. So if that's helpful for you, we're offering that to you. Otherwise, we'll see you guys soon. We're praying for you. Thanks, Ben, again. Appreciate it, buddy.
Yep, no problem. See you.